Shedeur Sanders just went from possibly being the first overall pick to not going drafted in the first round. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So thank you guys for making me your first listen of the day. Like I said in my opening, Shedeur Sanders, not drafted in the first round. Now, when I was crafting this episode and doing my ideas, I was like, you know what? I'm probably going to be making an episode about Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter making some Colorado history, being the first Buffs to be taken, two Buffs to be taken in the first round since who knows when, right? It was going to be an awesome moment. And instead, here we are talking about how I think Shedeur Sanders got a little bit blackballed in the process of this draft. Now, I think a lot of people are going to blame other factors such as Jackson Dart shouldn't have been taken there. Maybe certain teams should have done blah, blah, blah. I think when it comes down to it, I think a lot of teams were rubbed the wrong way by the fact that he was the son of Deion Sanders. I think a lot of teams were rubbed the wrong way about the fact that he came into this draft with a lot of confidence. I think that brash and arrogant thing from the combine, I believe more than one person felt that way, right? I think there's a pretty decent consensus on Shedeur Sanders that a lot of people were not comfortable with how confident he was in himself. Now, if you ask me if that's right, no. Like, if you're telling me you don't want your quarterback to be confident, I'll tell you, hey, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Now, I'll just sort of walk you through the draft. I had been talking to you guys about where I thought Shedeur would be going for months now, and things were happening, and I'll sort of give you a breakdown, right? I thought the Browns were a possible landing spot, but that sort of felt like a team that Deion Sanders would not want him to go to because of their history of basically killing the careers of quarterbacks. So the Browns were off the table. I thought the Raiders were very much in play until they signed Geno Smith. I thought the Jets might have been in play, but at the same time, they signed Justin Fields. So there was really no need for them to go get a quarterback. The Saints were my number one team for Shedeur Sanders. I thought it made too much sense, right? They had a quarterback who is on the wrong side of the hill in terms of his prime in Derek Carr. They have a young offensive-minded head coach in Kellen Moore who could really help Shedeur, who's helped other quarterbacks in years past that aren't necessarily the most gifted athletes or gifted throwers. And I'm not saying Shedeur is not a good thrower or a good athlete, but when you compare him to some of the other guys, he doesn't really stack up the same. Now, then you start sliding, and it's like, okay, everyone else doesn't need a quarterback from 10 on, right, until you get to 21st. And the Steelers were picking up momentum. I thought there was a chance they'd get him. And they decided to not make a move for Shedeur. Now, this tells me that they're going to make a free agency move or a trade move elsewhere. And I'm just a little bit shocked that Mike Tomlin didn't really come through for Coach Prime and Shedeur. Not really that he owes them anything, but I thought there was a connection there. Right, I thought Shedeur to the Steelers was making a lot of sense. Shedeur was kind of flirting with the idea of DK Metcalf and George Pickens being the guys that he wanted to throw to, and so it just made sense there. And then the ultimate slap in the face, and this is where I'm really a little distraught, I guess you could say, is Jackson Dart. So the Giants, obviously, they didn't take a quarterback at 3. They went Abdul Carter, which, great pick for them. They just re-upped Kayvon Thibodeau. Got a lot of pass rush there, right? So I was like, okay, they get a really good pass rusher in Kayvon Thibodeau, and now they bring in Abdul Carter. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I'm not mad at that, right? Good pick for them. They trade back in, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Here comes the Shedeur Sanders pick. And instead, they go with Jackson Dart, the Ole Miss quarterback. Now, Jackson Dart, I think, is a nice player. I think he, of all people, and I guess it's pretty hard to say this now because Shedeur didn't get drafted in the first round, but I think he, of all people, really benefited from how weak of a quarterback class this was. It just wasn't a it wasn't a dominant class like last year. There was 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round, which tied a record. It was like Cam Ward, who was taken first overall. The consensus on him was like he would be QB5 next year or last year or QB6, right? They did a mock draft of all the quarterbacks who are draft eligible next year and these quarterbacks, and it was like DJ Lagway and Arch Manning went before all of these guys. And so I'm not shocked that only 2 quarterbacks were taken. Now, you tell me that the Giants trade back into the first for Jackson Dart, who, I mean, much of the criticism on him is if you look at where all his production comes against, it's against bad teams, right? He threw 29 touchdowns last season. 5 of them came against Furman. 4 of them came against Georgia Southern. 6 of them came against Arkansas. Not a really good team. And it's like, okay, where are we seeing this excitement? Then our Ole Miss has a chance to really, I guess, make a move for the playoff, right? They're playing against Florida, and he delivers a dud, right? He throws 2 interceptions in clutch time, where it was like they needed him to be technically 3, because one of the plays got called back, if I'm not mistaken. But they needed him to clutch up, and he couldn't do it, right? Jackson Dart was a habitual, like, very good quarterback. I thought Shedeur Sanders did way more with way less. And so I'm pretty shocked to see him fall. Now, after the Giants traded up, the Falcons traded with the Rams. And so the Rams were kind of like that last resort option for Shedeur Sanders in the sense of maybe they draft a successor to Matthew Stafford, but wasn't likely. But that was kind of like the last hope, if you will. And then after that, there was really no more spots for him, right? It's the Ravens. They have Lamar. The Lions have Jared Goff. Jane Daniels, Washington. The Bills have Josh Allen. The Eagles, they traded up to get Jahad Campbell. And then the Chiefs obviously don't need a quarterback. And so what is my overall takeaway from this? Well, for one, I think teams got a little scared of Shedeur Sanders and all that he brings to the table, right? I think there's a lot of questions about him not being a super freak athlete, him not having an arm that could throw the ball 70 yards down the field. I think there's a lot of questions about that, and that's fair, right? But I think his accuracy and his IQ is something that should have made up for that. And so when I see him not go in the first round, I'm just like, okay, these teams were scared of everything that comes with him, right? Which is Deion Sanders, a very passionate fan base, almost cult-like following, which I greatly support. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so we can continue to have some fun as we cover the Buffs. But realistically, Shedeur Sanders falling this low was not in my cards, right? I thought, like, for sure top 10. Then his over-under dropped to 21.5. And I was like, okay, it's going to be the Steelers. And it just wasn't in the cards, right? And I don't think the draft, it's not over, obviously. I think this is upsetting for a lot of people. I think it's disappointing for Shedeur. I think it's kind of embarrassing. But at the end of the day, I think Coach Prime, he's very connected to the NFL. I'm sure he knew this was a possibility. I think it's a disappointing possibility. I think a lot of people sort of psyched themselves out of drafting Shedeur Sanders because of all of the chatter, right? It was like, oh my gosh, he's too confident. Oh my gosh, he's not Josh Allen. He's not Lamar Jackson, right? He's not a freak athlete. And it's like, okay, none of these quarterbacks are, right? Just because Cam Ward can throw sidearm doesn't mean he's Patrick Mahomes, right? Patrick Mahomes has always had a very good sense of urgency, a very good sense of what risk to take. Cam Ward loves to throw the ball flat-footed or really hum it into tight windows. Jackson Dart has been a guy who has never really been a star in the brightest moments, right? So I don't understand why Shedeur Sanders falls. Like I know why he did, right? It's just not enough quarterback needy teams. I think teams got scared. Nobody wanted to be the team that took a chance on him. And now I think it's going to be a decision that they regret. I think it's going to be a decision that Shedeur Sanders, assuming he's the player that I think he will be in the NFL, he's going to prove them wrong. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, you're lost, right? You can't really do much about it. But for Shedeur Sanders, I mean, I wish him the best. It's disappointing that his draft journey is going like this. That being said, these teams, there's still opportunities for him to go. I imagine he will not be on the board for that long. I don't think he's going to slide anywhere past, I guess, the middle of the second round. But it's still quite shocking to see him fall this low. I think we all know it's partially his family. I think there's this unrealistic expectations as to what quarterback should be, right? Jackson Dart, I don't think he has a huge arm. He's pretty athletic, though. I think that sort of weighed in as a factor as well. And the thing with the Giants, and I talked about it as well, this will be my final point on it. The Giants were never a good fit for me for Shedeur, right? Because you have Jameis Winston, who thinks he's going to be the starter, and who is a locker room. Everyone in the locker room loves Jameis, right? He's funny, he's cool. He jokes about stealing crabs or crawfish, whatever it was. And then you have Russell Wilson, who thinks he's literally the second coming of God. And Russell Wilson thinks this is his revival tour and how he's going to lead this team to a Super Bowl. I was told by an insider from the Giants, someone who covers the team closely, that Russell Wilson was expecting like a multi-year $20+ million deal from the Giants. So like Russell Wilson is clearly still in this level of delusion to where it's like, it's me. So I didn't think Shedeur going there was a good opportunity for Shedeur, but I did think it was on the table. And so obviously it didn't happen. At the end of the day, it's just one of those things where Shedeur is going to get an opportunity, just didn't happen in the first round. So when we come back, we're going to be talking about Travis Hunter, where he landed, because he made a little bit of history for the Colorado Buffaloes and the NFL. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Let me get the little graphic. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. If you're new to the show, there's a lot of people in this chat. What's up to all of you? Appreciate you guys for tuning in late at night. But we talk Shedeur Sanders, and I'll talk about my top landing spots for him as we move forward. But right now we're talking about Travis Hunter, and he made history, right? Travis Hunter, and I think the Jaguars, they really know what they wanted. They really knew that they wanted a guy that could do a little bit of everything. And Liam Cohen, the new head coach, the guy that's like, Duval, like he said, I'm an offensive-minded coach. I want an offensive player. And so it's one of those things where they got aggressive. They traded up with the Browns. They swapped picks 2 and 5, and then they gave a handful of picks away later in the draft. And they go up and get Travis, which is sort of like a reunion homecoming vibe for him, because he's from the Georgia, Jacksonville area, obviously different states, but he's from around there. And he's going to be a guy who gives Trevor Lawrence a clear number one option, or at least a number two to pair with Brian Thomas. Because I think what's been missing for Trevor Lawrence is consistent weapons. And obviously Brian Thomas emerged as a star this past year, but there's just been so many issues with Trevor Lawrence not having the talent around him. And now they're giving him that, right? And now he could do a little bit of both as well, because Travis is going to play some defense, right? He said, according to a report from Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports, when Travis spoke to the Jags, he talked to both the offensive coordinator and the defense coordinator. Now, him getting drafted by the Jags was a bit of a surprise to me, and it was a bit of a surprise to Travis, because he said he hadn't talked to them since I think it was the Combine. And so I think the Jaguars did that on purpose, right? I think they didn't want people to know that they were eager to trade up, because then maybe the Giants move up, or maybe someone else, whoever is at 4, moves up, right? Like maybe it starts a little chain reaction. The Patriots, it is. Maybe it starts a little chain reaction of like, hey, we got to go up and get Travis Hunter before someone else does. And so I really like the fit. I said he made history, and he did in 2 different ways, right? The first way, highest drafted corner in NFL draft history. And then the second way, he was the first wide receiver taken or the earliest wide receiver taken since Calvin Johnson in 2007. Now, process that. No corner, right? Deion Sanders, Darrelle Revis, you name a corner, whoever it is, right? No corner has gone earlier than Travis Hunter. Wide receivers, there's been so many good ones to go through the drafts, right? It's like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, like you name a receiver. Calvin Johnson is the last time you have to go back to find a quarterback, to find a wide receiver who's taken as early as Travis Hunter. Now, do I think the Jags are going to let him play both ways? I think they'll let him try it. I've been consistent in this, and you guys can get mad at this, whatever. I've been consistent in this. I think, and I kept saying whoever drafts him, now we know it's the Jags. The Jags, I think they will let him try it. And if he becomes a problem, if it becomes a problem, like maybe he looks tired or maybe he gets a little banged up, I think they pick for him. If everything goes well, I think they figure it out for a few years. And then as he starts aging, then they go, hey, we really need you on this side of the ball. So I think the Jaguars are willing to take a risk with Travis Hunter. Obviously, they traded up for him. So I think they're willing to risk him playing both ways, because why would you not at least try it if you're going to move up that early for him? So that's my take on Travis Hunter. When we come back, I'm talking Shedeur Sanders landing spots. I'm going to predict where he goes, walk you through what's next for him, so much more, because obviously the NFL draft is always full of excitement. But first, a quick break. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Amazon Fire TV Stick. Amazon's getting crazy over here. Did you know your Fire TV Stick is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple. There's endless entertainment with 4K streaming. Watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. You can host with hardcore gaming experience, can share. If you have a hardcore gaming person, if you're a hardcore gaming person, you could do a little bit of everything on this thing. So go check it out. So head to Amazon.com/FireTV locked on to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, your kebabs. I almost said your kebabs for some reason. I guess I'm hungry. We're talking about Shedeur Sanders again, his likely landing spots, because obviously he did not get drafted in the first round. So let me walk you through the top 12 picks, top 13 top 14 if you will. The draft opens with the Browns, then the Texans, then the Titans, the Browns again, the Raiders, the Pats, the Bears, the Saints, the Bears, the Jets, the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Colts, and then the Rams. I think Shedeur Sanders, bold prediction here, I think he goes within those first 14 picks, and I imagine he goes to the Browns or he goes to the Raiders. Now, another quarterback needy team that I could see moving up again is the Saints, right? They're at 8. Maybe they just wait a little bit to get Shedeur. I think the Browns, they have the 2 of the first 4 picks in the second round. I think they go Shedeur or Jalen Milroe. It honestly depends. At the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, who do you like better, right? Jalen Milroe is a freak athlete. So at the worst case scenario for Jalen Milroe, he's going to be a freak athlete that his legs could get him out of a lot of issues or a lot of problems. Shedeur Sanders, very accurate quarterback, very accurate passer. So it's up to the Browns there. The Texans don't need a quarterback. The Titans, doubt they're going quarterback. The Raiders are interesting because it's like they were linked to Shedeur a lot. He has that connection to Tom Brady. Obviously, Tom Brady didn't feel connected enough to take him in the first round, but that doesn't mean he can't take him in the second. The Pats don't need a quarterback. The Bears don't need a quarterback. And then it brings me back to the Saints. And it's like, okay, the Saints, Derek Carr is kind of injured. His future with the team is up in the air. And they currently have Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler. And I don't think either of those guys are long-term starters. I think they're both fine temporary solutions, if you will. But I don't think either Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener are what the Saints need a quarterback. And so they need a franchise option. And I think if you're Kellen Moore, if you don't pull the trigger on Shedeur Sanders in the first, maybe you pull the trigger on him in the second. And there's less, like you're not as much tied to him, right? I think you got someone who could protect him in the first with Kelvin Banks, and you get him in the second. And I think, and this is a cynical way of looking at it, whoever drafts Shedeur Sanders in the second round is not necessarily tied to him. Right? I think that's the brutal reality is they could draft him and be like, you know what, we took a second round flyer on him. Doesn't mean that he's our solution. Now, I think Shedeur Sanders could be an NFL franchise quarterback, but the mindset of these teams is like, hey, we're going to take him in the second, and what happens, happens. If he's really good for us, great. If he's not, we still have next year and the year after to find a quarterback, right? Arch Manning comes out in 2027, I believe, because I don't think he's going to come out next year. DJ Lagway, same thing next year. Lenora Sellers is out there. Like, there's going to be options for these teams. So very, very unfortunate that Shedeur didn't go. I think my teams where I see him going remain the same, because other than that, once you get out of the second round, I don't think there's like, I think there's going to be a large journey for quarterbacks, right? That doesn't make sense, but I think quarterbacks are going to fall. Tyler Shuck, Will Howard, Quinn Ewers, I think those guys are going to be third, fourth round picks, right? I think there's going to be a dramatic drop off. So look for the Browns to make a move, look for the Raiders, and look for the Saints. Those are the three best options in my opinion. Anyone else after that would probably be a surprise. So appreciate you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. And I will see you guys tomorrow as we cover the draft again, and we'll be talking all things Shedeur Sanders and the rest of the Colorado Buffaloes. This has been Locked On Buffs. If you're new to the show, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you don't miss out on a moment of our coverage. Thank you guys.